So whenever I did the NADA page web assignment, one of the interesting things that I found was the one about the terminology tips. So whenever I didn't really know about athletic trainers until I came to TLU because in my high school we didn't have trainers. So then I thought you would just call them trainer, and obviously you don't do that, and they really don't like that. So that's something that that's a tip that I would have liked to have known before talk to any of the athletic trainers here at TLU, because on the terminology tips it talks about athletic training or AT, you're supposed to refer to them like that, do not use trainer or certified trainer, that's completely incorrect. And I just didn't know that, so I found that really interesting because you'd think that you could just say trainer, that it'd be fine, but some of them actually get really I guess offensive whenever you say that, and I just didn't realize that at first at all.
Yeah, so I mean, I did athletic training in high school, but that's something that we always said, nobody ever corrected us. So
we didn't have any. So when I first got here, I was like, oh, trainer, and they got kind of mad. I was like, no, I'm so sorry. I was not being disrespectful. I just did not know.
So something I found interesting about the NADA assignment, I found it was the most interesting to me when I looked up the legislature. So I found the Sports Medicine Licensure Clarity Act, and basically they're trying to protect athletic trainers when they travel with their sports team and go out of state, because I guess the law right now says if you travel with your sports team and you go out of state, it doesn't matter, your license doesn't apply there, so you can get into trouble for practicing in that state.
Oh, what the heck? So are they just supposed to not have trainers when they go out of state? Athletic trainers when they go out of state?
I don't know. I mean, they're pushing to. It said they're pushing to get it changed.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense to me. You would think you would have that freedom if you're with your school or you're with your team.
Yeah. So are their trainer? I don't know. That's really interesting, actually. Yeah. Um. Okay, so then the next part is the NADA position statement, and then the recommendations. So I picked the one over, it was effective injury prevention training programs on injury reduction and performance enhancement. And, oh wait, okay, that's not it. It was the National Athletic Trainers Association position statement, prevention of anterior cruciate ligament injury. And I picked that one because I tore my ACL. So anything about ACL, I find extremely interesting and intriguing, just because I know so much about it, and I mean just because I'm super familiar with it, so it's easier as well. And then the one of the recommendations is the effects of injury prevention training programs on injury reduction and performance enhancement. And the subpoints are the multi-component training programs that include feedback regarding techniques and at least some of the exercise categories flexibility, strength, plyometrics, agility, balance. I mean, it makes sense. And then some of the programs are advocated to improve lower extremity biomechanics, which increase your sagittal plane motion and decrease your frontal and transverse plane motion, and decrease your knee joint loads. And all that makes sense when regarding ACL tears and preventions and whatnot. And then my second one was the exercise selection and training intensity, my second recommendation. And the training program involves offering feedback on movement techniques to keep your knees over your toes, and just different things like that to help when lifting and whatnot. And then injury prevention training should be performed at progressive intensity levels that are challenging and allow for excellent movement quality and technique. And all that stuff makes sense. This is literally stuff I would go through whenever I turn my ACL. So yeah.
So we actually picked the same position statement. I did pick two different so we picked one of the same recommendation. It was the multi-component training programs are advocated to improve lower extremity biomechanics.
Mm.
But then I picked multi-component training programs are promoted for improving measures of functional performance. It's talking about like the vertical jump, hop distance, hop speed, the estimated VO2 max, and sprint speed. And then also multi-component injury prevention training programs are strongly endorsed for reducing non-contact and indirect contact knee injury other than ACL injuries during physical activity.
Yeah. Did you just pick the ACL one just because like that was interesting?
I picked the ACL one because that's like the most common thing that I saw when we were in high school. Is like every time we turned around, somebody was in our athletic training clinic because they had an ACL injury.
Yeah, it's common. Yeah. So now the two sections from the results of the social determinants article. Oh, I'm gonna make you the host so that you can share.
Okay.
Oh, you are the host. Right? Okay.
Yeah, it worked. Okay. So I have the results pulled up over here, and I picked 3.2 and 3.6, and I was gonna get to them, but it seems to take a while. So I'll just briefly go over them, I guess. In 3.2, it was the I had a little bit of trouble like trying to pronounce the words, I'm not gonna lie. But 3.2 was the disparities in life expectancy. So despite overall improvement in the United States, disparities in life expectancy persist. I thought it was interesting that in 1950s, the white race had a life expectancy that was nearly 9 years longer than the Black Americans did. And then it kind of like drastically changed, but there's still a difference, which I also thought was interesting. I guess it makes sense because with the changing of the times and like honestly the treatment of Black Americans in the United States. Yeah. But the mortality rate changed from 9 years to a difference of 3 years. And then life expectancy at birth differs from the rural to the urban lifestyles. The rural areas run 3 years shorter than the metro living lifestyles. And then 3.6 was the disparities in healthcare access and quality. So the individuals have neglected to seek medical care explicitly because of the cost. Generally, families with the income that is less than 35 a year were over 10 times likely to avoid medical care, which, so I actually did talk about this in one of our Marco Polo videos. Like that's something that I'm kind of accustomed to because we don't generally go to the doctor, but but I kind of found it interesting that the emergency room visits were more likely in children coming from rural areas than they were in metro areas, and also coming from a single parent household.
Oh, the emergency rooms are more likely with a single parent household. Is that what you said? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because it's most likely like single moms.
Yeah, so I was thinking like maybe because if you're a single parent, like obviously you have more responsibility to uphold, so you can't always be around.
Yeah.
So maybe like accidents happen, I guess.
Yeah. So for mine, wait, were you done?
Yes.
So for mine, I picked the same first one as you, the disparities in the life expectancy.
Oh.
And yeah, I thought that was kind of crazy that like there's still a difference. But I mean, like in today's society, like it makes sense with everything
does make sense.
Going on. Yeah, like especially like recently, or in the past like few years, especially. Yeah, and wait. And then I had also picked the first one, the disparities in social determinants of health. And then that figure that was on there, the figure one, it showed that
This one?
The poverty, unemployment, yeah, the 2 times higher poverty rate among the American Indians, Alaskan Natives, Black African American was 25%, Hispanics were 22.6, and all of those compared with the non-Hispanic whites was only 10. So like that's crazy. And then the unemployment rates are more than 2 times higher among the American Indian, Alaska Natives, the AI, ANS, and blacks compared to the non-Hispanic whites. And then the Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders have 50% higher unemployment rates than the non-Hispanic whites. And there was also like substantial disparities in educational attainment as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that makes
sense. Yeah. What was it? Let's see the percentages.
Do you need me to scroll anywhere?
It was like 52% of Asian Americans in 2015 had a college degree, compared with 34% of non-Hispanic whites and only 20% of blacks.
Yeah.
And the Hispanics was only 14%.
It was pretty interesting, I think this article was.
I always think that's interesting, like all the different races, like it's still a big gap between all of them. That was it, right?
I think so.
Let me stop the recording.